Thanks for coming on board, Brendan. All these discussions must be very painful for you, so we do appreciate it. But MP security is really in the spotlight right now. £31 million extra security for MPs. We're learning that the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, has had round-the-clock protection now for 4 or 5 years. I mean, what are your thoughts on the fact that, I mean, poor Joe's tragedy kind of unlocked almost a Pandora's box? That's when it all started. But here we are some years on, and the situation seems to be one hell of a lot worse. Surely, given Joe's tragedy, it should be better now. What are your thoughts?
I think these threats to MP comes in waves. It tends to be a heightened moment of division and discord, and so you saw that over Brexit. There were Stephen Timms, for example, was attacked previously in the aftermath of the Iraq War, which was another moment, and now when it comes to Gaza and Israel. So these threats ebb and flow, but I think there has been an increase in the threat overall, and that I think is partly down to social media and the fact that extremists suddenly feel that they have found a community of other people who also have extreme views. It's easier to dehumanize people when you don't meet them, when you're not face to face. So I think that's having an impact. I think our wider sort of democratic culture, the sort of norms and the attitudes that we used to have, I think we used to be better at disagreeing well with each other, and I think we're finding that harder. But also, I think there are MPs who are stoking some of these culture wars, who are willing to turn hatred against whole communities. You just talked then, for example, about Sadiq Khan having to receive police protection. And that, I think, is in part because people have been ramping up the rhetoric about him and his role and his connection to Islamists and others. So I think we all have responsibilities. The public have responsibilities to change the way that we engage both online and face-to-face. Politicians also have those responsibilities as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting with Sadiq Khan. One of the reasons he's facing death threats is from Islamists themselves, according to the information that we have received, and has been receiving that protection since 2017, and in part possibly because he very vocally backed gay marriage. But do you think now we live in an age where we almost have to accept that those who are public figures, those in the public eye, those who have democratic duties are going to have to automatically be entitled to better protection that once upon a time was only for cabinet ministers?
So just to be clear on Sadiq Khan, Sadiq Khan has been besieged by threats both from Islamists and from the far right, and those have been increasing in recent months. So that is something we should all be concerned about. I think one of the most important things here is we don't have to trade off these threats. One, a threat from the far right isn't less or worse than a threat from the Islamists, and a threat from the Islamists isn't worse or better than one from the far right. We have to take on this dehumanization and this hatred of politicians, no matter where it comes from. I think to your question, I don't think we should take this as being acceptable. I don't think we should take it as being the norm. I think we have to rebuild the democratic culture, starting in our schools and how we debate these issues, starting really in terms of how we all engage as members of the public, because there's very few people, thank God, who would do something as extreme as the murder of Joe or David Amy's, these assassinations of members of parliament. But what is happening, I think, particularly online at the moment, is that there are too many people who are willing to use dehumanizing language, who are willing to go along with the sort of hateful mob, who are willing to build and exacerbate and build tensions between different people and different communities. And that is meaning that violence is more likely to result. So I think we have to start there. How do we rebuild that democratic culture where we want politicians that we can sidle up to at the pub on a Friday night and say, look, I've got a concern about this planning application or migration or cost of living. We want our politicians to be accountable. If we want to live in a democracy where our politicians are accountable, that comes with responsibilities, and that's about how we conduct ourselves in the public debate.
Brendan, thank you so much for coming on. Brendan Cox there, Survivors Against Terror.